Hey there, it's David, and welcome to My Extra Mile. And also, welcome to my home. Really excited about today's show. This gentleman is a medical practitioner who was able to transition from a normal, typical brick and mortar business with lots of employees and no time to a fully online business. A great transition into network marketing, where he's become amazingly successful with a global business, and he's going to share how he did that and also some of his daily rituals that have allowed him to expand and build a global empire. With that being said, please subscribe. You know, if you hit the like button, it changes the algorithms on YouTube for us, and also get involved with the conversation. This is all about conversations, and enjoy today's show with my friend, Mr. Kyle Nekrash. And my guest today is someone who I'm in love with. I mean, someone who I've spent a lot of personal time with. We've traveled in foreign countries together. We've had guy trips together. He's spent time at my home. And I've watched him and I've witnessed him in so many different arenas with his family, with his wife, Megan. I've watched him traveling countries, in foreign countries, his curiosity, how he enters countries, how he dresses, how he looks at food, how he looks at wine. Everything about him there's a level of passion which I see very rarely in all areas, even in adventure, in the way his hobbies, how he approaches those, or his home, his garden, chopping wood. It doesn't matter where it is. When he does it, he brings this level of excitement, which is really, really contagious. So I'm really excited to have my good friend Kyle Nekrash be on the show today. Kyle, how you doing, mate?
Oh, buddy, thank you so much for that intro. And you know what? It's I have to say, a lot of those neat experiences all have to do with you. So I'm in immense gratitude how much my life has changed since you've come into it, my friend.
Well, you know, this is early days in this series, but I contextually, if you're listening to this in a year from now, we are at a time during the coronavirus, but hopefully we want to talk about something today that's relatable to all areas of life, whether it's during this time or in the future, where you may be going through other challenges as well. So again, just to say, you've been at home now for how long? How long have you been sort of, how do we call it, stuck? We live in.
Well, I get my hair cut every 3 weeks. So just by the length of my hair, you know, I'm probably approaching the 5-week mark where I have not done much myself.
You told me earlier you've been dabbling with cutting it yourself. Is that?
There we go.
So this
I'm
is
ready.
all about how she thinks and the things she does to create the success she has.
You
and I had this great conversation about bios and how often bios become this really kind of, you know, it almost detaches you from other people. People listen to a bio and it's like, oh, I can never be like that. Or, oh my gosh, you know, this is an untouchable. And yet you did a description earlier, which I really loved, is you describing your life today and you describing your life as a boy. So why don't you give me that bio? Because I think it's such a fresh approach. You know, so when you were young, you were living on a lake. Carry on.
Yeah, you know, it was funny. I did a call for a group out of Vegas there a couple of days ago, and they asked for my bio, and I said, can we do this differently? We're in different times, and I think relatability is going to be so key. And I said, we'll timeline it so that people can see this journey from, you know, versus being announced as, you know, 8-star Ice Jenks millionaire, all that kind of stuff. How about from the beginning to where we were? And then you and I started talking about, you know, even, you know, how I grew up. And really, honestly, if you come to my house any day of the week, I'm not even, I guess I'm kind of wearing fleeces, but I have a baseball cap on. I'm outside. I live on a lake. But if I go back to growing up, we lived just off of a lake, and I had a dog. A dog was so important to me, and I had a dirt bike. I rode my dirt bike every single day. My job was to chop wood for the house, and here I am. You know, that was back as a youngster. I'll be turning 50 this year. Wow. And I wish I can pick up my computer and turn it, but we live right on a lake. I have a pickup truck. I got an amazing dog. I do have a better dirt bike, David. Technology, this one's much better. And I chop wood. And so it's kind of like, you know, you see all these different natures when we get together in meetings and with big groups of people. And it's almost like, these different characters pop into play, when really at the end of the day, I think the majority of us are just like anybody else.
Well, we talked about that as well. And again, I'm going to offer this to you because I want this to be different and fresh. And if you're listening to this and you're going to follow along with future series, I'm always looking for different ways of sort of having conversations that evoke some form of change. Because at the end of the day, if you just spend 45 minutes, have a great time, that's great. But if you spend 45 minutes with us, and at the end of the day, you have some form of even realization or breakthrough or something that you start to bring into your life, then obviously the 45 minutes has created great value. And so, when Kyle and I, when we get together, we talk about the past, we talk about, moments where, the worst things were happening. Well, that's how it appeared. And those kind of, what do you call them? You call them something moments. I wrote it down. You're kidding me moments. Is that what you call that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, each one of them is like a stair step or an occurrence. But to me, I look at the moments that have happened that really at the time either scared me or I was embarrassed, and I say they're you're kidding moments where like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Did that just happen? Or are you kidding me? You want me to do that? Or are you kidding me? Did I just say that? All those are you kidding me moments really have been super defining. And
that's why, I mean, even now, we look at the situation going on in the world, and I know from experience, because I'm like you, I'm 10 years older than you, but like you, I look back at all of those, are you kidding me moments, those moments, like you say, embarrassment or public humiliation, or when you've done something so bad or wrong that, you're kind of cringing inside and you can't think about anything else. Years later, you look back and you always say, or I've always said, I'm so glad that happened. Because of that, I found a path. It was in that moment of absolute, where I wanted the world to swallow me up, where I found a new path or a new direction, or as you like to say, a step. So we're going to explore some of the steps that you've taken both in your profession, but in your life, because I think they're synonymous. They come together. But I also want to offer you something which I've never done before, again, from a fresh approach, is that at any moment you can turn into the interviewer. So right now I'm being interviewed. So if you feel at any moment that you want to take over and you want to interview me or bring me into the conversation in a way, so it's not just one-way street, this is going to be a two-way street. So with that being said, why don't we start there? Why don't we start with one of your, are you kidding me moments in life that has sort of come forward and you now see it playing out in your business and your success? All right, so let's start there.
Well, courage is a big thing, and there's so many different definitions, and I know that we can apply it in different ways. And the first thing that comes to my mind, there's a time, David, where I worked with a heli skiing company, and I did so for 3 seasons, a company called CMH. And it was in my second season that we, where the lodge was located, the only way we can get there is by helicopter. And we had all these mountain ranges that we got to ski throughout the year. But there's this one mountain, it was almost like a folk tale in dinner time. Right, you can see it out the window. And the run was called Going Home, because you could actually, depending on the snow, ski all the way back to the lodge. But this mountain was steep. I think it was in the 30-degree range somewhere. I'd be lying, but it was almost always in a shadow because of how steep it was. And so here I was. It was the last day of the season. I went out skiing in the morning. I mean, my bucket was full. And I thought, all right, well, I'm leaving tomorrow back to Vancouver. So I tossed my ski gear into the washer, my gloves, everything that I owned, because I wanted it not stinky for next year. And I get a radio call from the helicopter engineer, and he says, Kyle, he goes, the heli's coming in to refuel in 5 minutes. They're skiing, going home. Get your butt out to the helipad. And I was like, ooh, I got no gear. So I ran up to the lodge and I opened the coveted guides room where all the guide suits are laid out, like this special area. And I was like, all right, which guide could I piss off the least but ask for forgiveness later? And I grabbed a guide suit. I ran into the shop, got myself a brand new pair of Gordini gloves. And I'm running out to the helicopter, nothing strapped on. And I get there and he goes, you're wearing a guide suit. And I go, I know, bud. I says, mine's in the washer. I says, don't worry. We'll sort it out later.
Forgiveness.
So David, we get in and I'm in the chopper and I'm doing everything up and getting ready. And we start to approach this mountain. And because it's so steep, the helicopter is just corkscrewing its way up, right? And I'm looking out the window and I'm watching one of the guests who I knew coming down, and this slough breaks down. And I like to say slough because it really wasn't a technical avalanche, but the slough breaks down and it leveled him and took him down the hill, and I lost sight of him. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to go down this? So we get to the top, and as we get out, the guide said, hey, listen, he says, come over and take a look. And you couldn't really see where it started or began because it was so steep. He says, I'm going to go first. He says, until you see my little dot appear at the bottom, nobody goes next. And it's one person at a time. That way there, if something happens, you guys at the top, we can come get you to the helicopter. And I'm like, that's when my knees all started to kind of shake a little bit. And I was like breathing differently. And I was sweating inside this new guide suit. And so we get down to, it's the last three people, the staff members, and they're like, hey, let's all do this together. I'm like, oh, okay. He said one at a time. So we jump off, and David, it was exhilarating. It was one of those things where, you know, you weren't skiing it. It was jump turn, jump turn, jump turn. And I was remember feeling my breath just coordinate with every jump. And in the back of my mind at the beginning was, don't catch an edge or don't cross your tips. But when that disappeared, it was like you're in this zone. And even slough from us came down. It was burying the tracks beside me, but I stayed in this rhythm. And we got to the bottom, and we might as well have won an Olympic championship. I mean, the celebration with this group of individuals that just went down this pitch was insane. The dinner time, we sat at the deck, beverages, pointing at the run. And I mean, it was just this incredible thing. But what it did for me is that are you kidding me? Did I just say yes to this moment? I thought, man, Kyle, you've skied crazy pitches. And it's not because you have to go out and do something that's death defying, because people in front of me were doing it. So I knew I could do it. But what I did is that moment, it allowed me from that point forward to just take off a little notch out of my fear belt and just get rid of it. Because I stepped into something that really, everything's all, yeah, until you get there and you're like, okay, I have to commit. And you do it, and it was the best.
That moment, but that moment at the top where you actually have to launch. I feel that moment so often in life, in business, but that's that moment, like going back to how you're going to relate this into your life and into your business, that actual moment. But there was a part of it before the story. And again, I don't want to ruin your story here, but when you arrived at this ski lodge, you weren't really equipped and you didn't really have the experience. You had the guts to take on something that was way beyond your reach. And again, we're not going to go backwards in the story, but you didn't have any of the right gear. You know, people are, who the heck's this guy showing up? But that as well, leading up to that ledge, leading up to this moment of hop, 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 leading up to the exhilaration, and then moving this lesson forward. Both those elements, first of all, saying yes to something you weren't ready for, and then having the guts to jump. Those two elements. Now, carry on with the story. I just want to bring that in for everyone listening because it's such a powerful part of it.
That's so true. And I think of our business, and just so I can weave it in between, you know, this was my second year of being at the same lodge. My first year, you know, I kind of BS my way in by saying I was a good skier, and I really wasn't. I showed up with a black home baseball cap, small gloves, not the ones that, you know, you need for powder skiing. I had tights, not ski pants. And I remember them after I wiped out over and over, they're like, number one, buddy, get some gear. And number two, what are you doing? So you're right.
Lucky you have a personality.
Yes,
Lucky that they probably liked you.
I was saved by the bell. But I'll just have one more quick ski one. Because I think of the times that when we ask people to do something that they've never done before. And, you know, you may relate it. Well, hey, listen, this is how I connected with somebody in our profession. But I look back, you know, I'm in Whistler and I'm skiing with a group. They ski in Switzerland and France, these guys. And so I go up with them. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good day. We're doing some great turns. And we get to the top of Whistler and they decide they want to jump off the cliffs. I'm like, oh, jeez. Heli skiing's one thing because you land in soft snow. Whistler. So the guy said to me, he says, look, he says, it's flat light. You can't see. He says, but he says, when we take off, just follow our ski tracks. Give yourself enough inertia because there's rocks at the top, you want to clear them, but there's also rocks on the side, you want to land between them. So don't deviate off of where tracks are. And I'm like, again, I'm going, are you, except for I put an F in front of that one, kidding me, right? So 1, 2, 3, they all leave, and I'm standing by myself. I'm like, okay, well, they did it. That was my number one thing. So whenever we think of something that we're being asked to do, has it been done before, right? So that flash moment, they did it, and I thought, Kyle, just trust it. And it was one of those things, again, I think you stop breathing. I probably got too much speed because I was, in my mind, worried about these rocks. Boom! I launched off this thing, and instead of a graceful jump like I normally do, I think I was like, wah, flailing down I went, but I landed with a beautiful wipeout. And I continued, and I did it again the next day. But it's just those moments where, you know, I wasn't being forced into doing it, David. I wasn't being challenged into doing it. It had been done before. So like when we go out and we connect with someone we're afraid to connect with, and you're sweaty palms, all that kind of stuff, and then you go and you do it. So I went and I did it. And that night we're down at the pub, and I'm talking about my first jump, which was, I was freaked out and why I looked a little uncoordinated, but the second one was better. It's the same thing when in our profession, you know, that first moment, there must be times in other people's lives. And I'm going to ask you this question. There must have been a time where you, not because you signed up to skydive, but maybe an experience where you were right there going, ooh, am I doing the right thing? But you knew other people had done it, so you took the leap anyway. And I think it's those that we can reflect back on and go, hey, you've done something like this before. And connecting with the person is nowhere near what it was to blindly jump off a cliff following 2 ski tracks. So you're going to be okay. Right.
So I think it does feel like that, though. When I train, like, you know, and you as well, we've trained people all over the world in this profession. And, you know, sometimes it can feel like you're standing on top of a mountain and that you've got rocks on both sides and you've got a rock in front, and you just have to trust that you're going to be able to launch, and you know that it's going to be messy, and you know there's going to be a garage sale at the bottom of that jump, and you know that if you really want a life that by design, which is kind of how I like to think that I can design my life, is that I have to not only do that first jump, I got to get back in the helicopter and go back up and do it again and again and again until at some point it becomes elegant and it becomes effortless, and it becomes that you're now jumping and there's someone behind you who's immobilized with their fear saying, I don't know. And they'll say, no, just watch me. All you got to do is you got to hit it at this speed. You just got to glide through the air, and don't worry, and just trust and just let those knees soften as you land, and you're going to be fine, right? But guess what? It's going to be messy the first few times, and that person's going to trust you. And that's kind of how we grow our business, right? In these kind of moments. And what I love about using the ski analogy, I did a heli skiing about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was snowboarding. And I hadn't snowboarded very much in 2 years, so I was really kind of rusty. And the other crazy thing I did is I went out and bought all brand new equipment right before. I thought, I can't go with this old equipment. I took equipment I'd never used before, you know, or I did 1 or 2 runs with them. And I went up in this helicopter, and it was I'm not like you. I'm not as good a skier or a snowboarder as you are. But I went up, and our first run was through the trees. And you know me, I'm not afraid of much. And I didn't think I was afraid of anything. I thought I conquered all the fears. But here I am, man, going through these trees and you know, on a huge pitch. And I was scared. And luckily, I've been scared enough to know the feeling of fear. And luckily enough to know to say, look, all I got to do is just be careful and take the risks I can now and just start to build the confidence that day. Because we had like 5 runs booked, you know, and I've got friends in the helicopter, and here I am. They're all at the bottom, and I'm still struggling to get down. And I was intimidated by the trees. I was intimidated by my own equipment. I was intimidated by the whole thing. And here I am just struggling. And here's the crazy thing, Kyle. My mind was wanting to quit the whole time. I could hear, even as strong as my mind is, my mind was telling me to quit. My mind was telling me, you don't go in the helicopter. And then it was saying things like, you're holding everybody up. You don't want to hold everybody up. This is their day. And I could hear all this noise in my head, this nonsense in my head telling me. And luckily, I got down there and I'm wet. I'd fallen over so many times. And you know what it's like. And I had good gear, long gloves, but I had snow in my gloves. I had snow in my helmet. I was like completely wet. I got back in the helicopter. And by the third run, I started to have a blast. I was still falling, but we were going in these big, beautiful bowls. And what it was is that feeling afterwards, the going through as much doubt as I had, as much fear as I had, and then keep doing it and keep doing it and keep falling, keep getting up. But that night, sitting with my friends, like you talked about, the celebration kind of thing, and they were laughing and enjoying watching me struggle and watching me overcome my own struggle was part of the storyboard. And, we were all at a chest puffed out. But again, going back to our business, I think a lot of people feel like they're sometimes they're even not in the helicopter yet. They have to have the courage to actually get in, to go up and see what it really looks like. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you also touched on something that I think is very important for our profession, is that we did it first so we can explain so somebody explained to me, Kyle, jump off that. Well, this is the neat part of the story. The next day, a good friend of mine, Bob, flew in from Pittsburgh because it was New Year's 1999. And so we get to the top. It was a clear day. The previous day was flat light. I didn't know where I was jumping. Today was a clear day. And I said, hey, Bob, I jumped off this cliff yesterday. He looks over and he goes, whatever, get out of here. I go, no. I says, all you got to do, I says, watch where my tracks go. I says, there's rocks at the top. You want to clear them and you're going to land right between the two. And he goes, buddy, give me a break. I says, all right. I went. And so it left him where I was the previous day going, well, he did it, so I guess I can do it. And he jumped. But the point of the story is that like that moment, as in our profession, when you can describe to somebody because you've done it, because that's leadership. Leadership is when you've done something that somebody else wouldn't typically do, but you gave them the tools because you did it first to show them how. And so, yeah, I mean, we can talk about skiing all day long.
Go back to when you started building your business, right? And for those of you who are brand new and or maybe not even in our business, you're listening to this, Kyle, you're at home, working from home. You have a home-based business, a network marketing business. You consider yourself, like me, to be a network marketing professional. But there was a time when you were horrendous at it. And I want to sort of go back to the moments, maybe the sort of the cliff jumping moments in your business, where you could hear the same thing I was hearing, which was, I'm going to quit, I shouldn't do it, this isn't working, I'm a failure, I'm awful, I it's not working for me. Can you relate back to the early days where quitting and or the fear of picking up that phone, or the fear of the conversation? Can you relate to any of those times so we can sort of connect the two?
Yeah, I think they still exist. Yeah, I don't think it's something that always will go away. And as we venture into this, let's go back to embarrassment after this.
All right.
That's the big fear of our profession, is people don't want to be embarrassed, really, at the end of the day. Otherwise, everybody would have the freedom to ask anybody questions they want. They just don't want to hear no. They don't want to feel embarrassed. So we'll touch on that afterwards, so I don't forget.
We'll go back to that, but I think your point there,
but
if anyone listening knew that they wouldn't get a no or wouldn't be embarrassed, they would just go out and do this. Right? That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I look back, I'll never forget when I first started, I had all my definitions, my wife and I had a great clinic, we're both healthcare practitioners. We had a chiropractic, massage therapy, acupuncture, laser, multidisciplinary clinic. And I remember thinking, I'm just not that over there. It was sort of a schmoozy thing. We had a beautiful closet. It was our vacuum closet. And at any given point throughout the month, you can go in there and you're seeing all these new bottles and these new packets, because other people would come in and tell me about the profession and whatever it was that they were selling. I even had tabs that you'd put in your gas tank that was supposed to make your car run better. That was a network market, and that was inside this closet, right? So with all my definitions before that, I had this fear of sounding schmarmy. And I'll never forget the one day when I finally, after telling my sponsor that I wanted to quit so many times. And he'd say, just hang in one more week, you're going to cycle. I'd be like, what's a cycle? And it would happen. I'd get my little paper paycheck. That was back in the days when you actually had to take the check to the bank and cash it. It was no,
those days.
yes, you know, and, but I remember I think this happens for almost anybody. There's a time when you sink into, it's kind of like an elevator. I gave this explanation to my daughter. She was having some issues at school, and I was driving her to school, and I said, honey, I says, it's kind of like, you know, you got to think of your body like an elevator. I says, sometimes the elevator's up in your head. And I said, your head can be influenced, it can be persuaded, it can be convinced, it can be swayed, all these different things. And I said, it's an important tool, your brain, but sometimes it can be the worst tool. I said, but if you drop the elevator down a shaft to your heart, I said, your heart is a phenomenal place because you really learn to sink into an emotion that most people don't visit because they're stuck up here. I says, but it could also be dangerous because if you make an emotional decision, because it's the head and the heart mixed together, I said, that doesn't sometimes work. I said, so you drop another level to your gut. I said, your gut never will make a mistake. And I says, and if you learn to ignore this and really trust what your gut's saying, you're never going to go wrong. And she's so cute. She goes, so Dad, you're telling me that I don't need my head while I'm writing a test. I just need my gut. And I sat there and I thought, okay, come on, give it to me quick. Yes, thank you. And I says, well, honey, I says, have you ever got your test mark back, a multiple choice, and you got one wrong and you're like, oh, I knew it was A. I said, have that ever happened? She goes, yes. I go, that was your gut at that time giving you the warning that you got to see afterwards that you got wrong. And she's like, huh. So with that said, David, there were moments where I would see someone in front of me and I knew that there was something that I can do to help them. Up here for 4 years stopped me from doing it.
So your perception of network marketing was it was schmarmy, and if you did it, you would sound schmarmy, and that was.
I would lose patience. I would lose all of I would have a reputation around our clinic. You know, I had all these things going on. And finally this one gal, she came in and she had been in Japan teaching English as a second language. And I was already teaching nutrition. And so she's like, Kyle, you got to help me. She goes, I put on all this weight. She had these dark circles in her eyes. She goes, I've tried everything. I don't know what to do. Can you put me on a nutrition program? And that was that moment where I was like, there's nothing from the grocery store that's going to help you right now. And I said to her, I remember going, have you ever heard of isogenics? And she's like, pardon? And I said, have you ever heard of it? She goes, no. And I did the second scariest thing I've ever done in that first moment is I let my sponsor talk to her, Warren. And so I was like, uh-oh. So as this went through, David, what ended up happening is she ended up enrolling. But she never came back to the clinic. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. I phone up Warren and I'm like, this is why I'm never going to do this as a business because I just lost a patient. Well, she came in. It was just after the 5th week. And just when she was asking me for help, she was crying at that time. 5 weeks later, she walked into the office and she burst into tears, but gave me a hug. And she said, I can't thank you enough for referring me. She goes, look at it. She goes, I'm down 28 inches, 21 pounds. She goes, look at the circle. She goes, I have never felt like this before. And so this is a step, David. This is that pivotal moment where I sat there and I thought, I'm even just getting goosebumps thinking about it.
It's funny. I just got them too.
How many people have I denied that experience because of the conversation going on in my head?
Right.
Where when I dropped down to my heart and my gut, when I looked at her and I thought, I have to help you because you're crying. So that was where I think was my very first breakthrough, where it enabled me to have conversations knowing that, all right, up here stopped me from creating that experience for a human being. I don't need to listen to this as much anymore. I need to be down in here and here because all the other people who don't even know that there's something out there to help them, I've denied them of a truth because of what? My belief, because of my story I was creating. There's no truth behind it, David. It was just my little story that I had going on up here. So,
Well,
I don't know if that answers your question.
Once you became a network marketer, once you sort of crossed that line because of this really real moment with this lady, you were very good, right? Because, you kind of went back into the head. You started bringing all of the medical and all of the product. I mean, I remember you could talk about products for like 9 hours without breathing. And, people would be like, stabbing themselves in the eye with a pen. And even though it was brilliant, you brought your medical approach to this profession, which is really a human approach versus, so that again moves from the head again. You're talking about, being very cerebral and as a network marketer, and how it really took you 4 years to say yes. And then how long did it take you before you kind of surrendered the title of medical professional and moved it over to become the network marketing professional? How long did that take?
Well, I think it had to do with transformations. It had to do with, my wife at the beginning didn't quite resonate with what was going on. And I think once an alignment occurred, because she was working for a nutraceutical company and her job was to talk to doctors, naturopath doctors, and chiropractors in Western Canada, so BC and Alberta. So she was like, what are you thinking? So the transition, David, was when our income started to alleviate the pressures that we had at the clinic from network marketing. It was almost like this is really legit. Like, this is legit. And the same thing kept on happening. And it was when I started to really realize the difference between a linear income at my clinic versus a leveraged income. The linear income at my clinic, I would show up to work, I would treat a patient, and I would get paid. But there were days, David, depending on weather, if it was snowing or power outages or whatever it may be, I'd show up to treat patients, but they'd cancel. I didn't get paid. But we still had our overhead. We still had our staff. We still had It was when we were in Hawaii. We were with our great friends, the Owens, and we're on the beach, and I checked, and I said, Meg, we cycled today. And back then, $54 for our cycle. And I said, and we're here. Because when you are self-employed, or even if you are employed, when you go away for a week or two, for us especially, you had to really save to get to that trip. But while you were there, you lost money. And then when you came back, you had to work double to get yourself back to that little neutral balance point. And we had done that over and over and over. Everywhere we went, we always have to come home. We work in Saturdays, we work in double shifts, we'd be doing everything we could. And this was the first time where we're like, this is occurring while we're sitting on the beach. And so that's when another little step occurred, another little aha moment, that it was like, wow, this is a completely different income stream that operates in a way different way that I didn't understand. I thought one sign up, one paycheck, one sign up, one paycheck, not understanding that behind that was a whole leveraged approach, to which we can discuss a different day.
Well, yeah, but I think what's important is that, again, if you're listening to this a year from now, in this moment, you're at home. The coronavirus we're all at home. The whole country's at home. I just heard today that all the parks are now closed, But I was just thinking, if you still had the clinic, because I remember you had the building, you had all these other practitioners, you took on the overhead, but you weren't making a lot of money. You looked like, from the outside looking in, anyone walking down the street is going to say, wow, the Nekrashes are doing incredibly well. But there was you had a mortgage, there was financial pressure that you just talked about. Underneath the look, you'd made it by the normal method, it looked like that. But the actual financial pressure was quite hard on you. My question to you is, what if you still had that, if you didn't have the income you do right now, the residual income, and you own that clinic right now, how long would you be able to survive with the kind of money that you were able to save and the kind of pressure that you were already under? What do you think would be happening to you currently? You probably thought about this already over the last few weeks, right?
Well, we have napkins. not paper ones, but fabric napkins that we use at the dinner table. And they all have questions that all evolve around gratitude of some form. And mine, it was not last night, but the night before was, what are you most grateful for right now? And I looked at Megan and I said, could you imagine in this moment if we had the clinic? And I said, we wouldn't be working. We probably wouldn't be living where we're living. A lot of things, the stress right now that we'd be going through would be immense. Even our bookkeeper on Monday said, I know you guys used to own a clinic. Do you still own it? Do you still make mortgage payments on it? And we're like, no, we sold it. She's like, whew. Because the responsibility, as you said, yes, it looked great. It was a beautiful building. We did an exceptional job on the renovation. It was a very popular clinic. You couldn't, get in on appointment for 2 months for any of the practitioners that were in there. Busy, busy, busy. But man, a lot of obligation, a lot of things that you wouldn't think about. But looking now in this moment where nobody's allowed to go to a clinic like that, it's not an essential service. And so it would have been closed over the last, 4-6 weeks, right? And so now you think to yourself, now we would have had to have made a lot of alterations in what we're doing in our life. We would have probably, the stress, I don't even want to consider what it would be like. That's what would be going on for us right now. And thank goodness, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, actually, we made that choice because, our business still carries on to this day. People are still eating. People want things delivered to their doorstep. They don't want to go outside. And it's really been, I don't even, without getting emotional, it's just an incredibly, incredibly massive gratitude that we made that decision.
Yeah. And, going back to those stepping stones, and I mean, obviously I just want to say, and you get paid every Monday as well, which I think
every week,
the concept,
every week. Yeah.
Every week you get paid, right? But going back to these stepping stones in sort of life, stories of moments that have led you to this pathway. Because I think there's people right now that are going through this is a big step that's waking some people up who are saying, holy moly, you know what, we can't survive 30 days. Because I mean, the reality for most people, is that they really are not financially in a situation where 30 or 60 days without income, they're prepared for. It's just not the norm here. But when we look at the sort of stepping into a profession like this, where if we go back to you not wanting to be schmarmy and all of these head thoughts, and then jumping off the cliff by actually phoning your sponsor and saying yes, and then going through this journey. Talk to me again about sort of, maybe some other lessons you've learned in life that you've been able to bring over that's allowed you to build what is an income that has allowed you to, you have I would call it your dream home, knowing you. It's this gorgeous place that allows you to live the life that you want, which is chopping wood and riding motorbikes and being out on the lake and enjoying nature and raising a family, but having this dream life that, again, and you can correct me if I'm putting words in there, but what are some of the other lessons that you've been able to transpose over, especially around, embarrassment or around, hardship or around struggle or around, things you sort of endured in the past that you look at and think, oh my gosh, going backwards, that was one of the great happenings in my life because it's given me the grit or the resiliency or the understanding or the experience today.
Well, there's a backstory to every story, and even the guides, when I first went heli skiing, like every day I wanted to do something to master myself. And with Isogenics, every day I wanted to do something to master myself because when I was younger, I was in grade 3 or 4, whenever it was, I think probably grade 3 when you're learning the vowels. And so A, E, I, O, and U, And so in classroom, and the teacher puts HOP on the board, and one of the kids puts up his name or puts up his hand and says, hop. She's like, good job. So she adds the E. And I was like, A, E, E. I'll put up my hand. And so I said, Hoppy. Exactly. The class, I know, right? The class breaks out laughing. And so I'm like, I still don't get the joke because she said the word E And I'm thinking hop plus E is hoppy. And as the class continued to laugh, she had me stand up and I had to go to the front of the class. I had my nose on the chalkboard for the remainder of the session. And I remember thinking, you're kidding me. So another you're kidding me moment. I was just answering a question. And
how old were you? Do you remember?
Well, grade 3. So what are you?
That's
7,
eight,
6,
8.
Yeah. And so I just you can imagine how many times did I put up my hand for the whole remainder of school?
Never.
I didn't. And so it wasn't until I did, and this is so key. And I want to go back to this when we're looking for people in our profession, the things that seem to be the common denominators that I've seen over and over again. Prior to Isogenics, I did some personal development growth. And I'll never forget, I was in the class and there was something that was right there. And I thought, I put my hand up. I hadn't put my hand up forever. And I gave the answer and the guy's like, no. He says, up to the mic. I'm like,
are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me? Can I just shout it from here? So up to the mic I go and I share my thing. And it really created this thought process movement. There's about 400 some people inside the classroom. And at the end, after these 2 days, he goes, usually there's always a couple people that we would want to approach that we would love to actually groom to teach this. He goes, you're one of them. And I was like, oh, I never did pursue that. But it was that moment that I thought, hey, you put up your hand this time and look at what happened as a result because you put up your hand. And so I think of the embarrassment that people are worried about. Again, remember, I always going to use the elevator shaft. My embarrassment lived forever up here because I didn't trust down here. That moment in that class, I was down here. It was just going, get up. Got it up there, right? And so when you're embarking upon making a decision into this profession, this will stop you. I almost guarantee it, as much as I don't want to say it. This will pull you towards it, but this will make the decision. And you'll sit there and your gut inside is going, there's got to be something here. I need to just explore it myself. I need to find out myself. I need to get my own answers versus the rumors. I need to ask questions without assuming. I need to just try what's the worst thing right now that can happen to me. And those come down here. And so that's a thing that, I mean, it's funny, the joke that comes from it, but it really was, I always reflect back to that and I go, Kyle, you kept yourself in hiding for 10, 12 more years. And my message to everybody else is that drop now while you can. Don't wait 12 years like I did, and start using your gut a little more often. Because, David.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, but also, when you look back to that moment in the classroom, that's also giving you the empathy and the understanding and the compassion. So, you go back in time and wish it didn't happen. No, probably not. Because, in that moment where you did put up your hand and you were invited to the mic, set you on a whole new pathway where, as if you just sort of breezed through school, your hand had been up all the time, you hadn't gone through the hardship and the humiliation. And really that's what it was. And I remember for me, extreme humiliation led me to becoming a trainer and training over 1 million people around the world. It was, if I hadn't gone through that extreme humiliation, I would have never even noticed the path. I would have walked over the path because I thought I was something else. And because of the humiliation, I was able to see a clear path. So again, when we go back to these, these moments that, are you kidding me moments that each person listening has gone through, and that sort of trusting the gut and sensing that there has to be a better way. And there's a way where someone like yourself, and I'd love to have, you and Megan on the show together, and talk to you at the same time so we can see how couples are doing this at the same time. But again, just to sort of ask you again to go back to the moment where your nose is on that board, that's a moment that's actually elevated you now as you look back. Is that right?
Totally. I mean, I have massive gratitude for Miss Trotsuck. That was her name. not mistrust, because I'll never forget, how I felt that day. I went home, kept my mouth shut, and I look now and I go, thank goodness. Because even though I did have to wait 12, 13 more years to put my hand, or actually longer, because I was in my 20s and 30s to put up my hand, that was a breakthrough that would have never happened. And I don't think I would have spoke the way I spoke when I actually got to the mic had I didn't have all that time of reservation and whatnot going, no, you do have a voice. You do have a voice. Let it be heard. And had I been conditioned, I may not have had the same message that they would have heard. So you're right, 100% correct. But before we end, I want to talk about, we're in the business now, and there are things that I believe that people can do right this moment, regardless of these experiences, that were pivotal for me. I look back, I used to always say, to Warren, I'd be like, buddy, just tell me what to do. Tell me what to say. I'll do it. Like, just tell me what to do. Tell me what to say. And he's a magician when it comes to aligning people. And he aligned me with a gentleman by the name of Kirk Metz. And I found out that his calls were at like 4:30 in the morning.
I remember.
I was like, what? So I get up at like 4, I get downstairs, and I get on this call, and I'm sitting there and I'm going through the things that he's saying and, just listening, because I know I'm a guest, I'm not even on his team. And then we had homework that we had to talk about on the next call. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I don't know any of these people. So I shared my homework, and here's what I want to share with everybody else. You never know the words of influence you have until you just give up, surrender, and say them. Especially if you have your gut right now is going, say something, do it, right? He says to me, I do my share. I don't even remember what it was about. It was about a gentleman that I was working with. And so he comes on and he says, ladies and gentlemen, this right here is going to be our next 6-figure earner in Isogenics. And he edified whatever I was talking about, and me not knowing that. And I just, that one moment where those words were spoken, where someone else who I didn't even know believed in me, created that pancake flip for me, where I was like, okay, I can do this. And the other thing that I know that you can step into right now. So number one is really, this has to be authentic. This has to be in the moment. This can't be, okay, I'm going to call up 10 people and tell them I believe in them. But the other thing that you can do right now that happened for me is, I remember spending a lot of time just walking around with Warren and following Jimmy Smith. My first time I met him, he brought me upstairs, showed me his little black book. This was way back when this is when I met you, David. That was at Isogenics University when they were so small. There weren't even 100 people. I remember walking up to you and, my Bojangles were huge. And I said, hey, buddy, I'm going to be your next trainer. I even know my song. But watching Jimmy in his gratitude and what he would do with his team, when we'd go to the next event, we did it together when we were in Edmonton. You actually called me up and say, hey, dreams come true, I guess. You have a lead opportunity to be a product trainer. And I watched him there, and I just watched what he did with his team. And he used to always say, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And his gratitude. And so I really started early practicing that art of gratitude. And every little small thing that happened within our organization, and it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Sometimes it's just coming to somebody's house with a block of cheese, a bottle of wine, and just acknowledging them for who they are and what they are. We've resorted a lot to social media recognition, where it's nice, but it just doesn't feel the same when you're sitting there right in front of somebody. I'll just delete that. And so I got that from Jimmy, and it's something that I've practiced all the time. And I know that it's something you can do right now. And even if you're not in this business, just the people in your life that you could sit down for a very brief moment and just, especially in this time that we're in right now, where people's minds are really other places. They're not heart-centered right now. They're very much up here. A lot of doubt, a lot of worry, and so if you can come in and be able to, I don't even know how to do that.
Don't worry about it. We can handle it.
There we go.
Real as it gets.
And just get into that space where you can pay forward some, there you go. See, it must be that witching hour. Pay forward some gratitude, because watching Jimmy and what he did, and obviously you see where he is with his organization and who he is as a human being and why we love him so much. He gave that gift to me very early on that I have stuck with the whole way through. Could we do more? I think so. Have we done a lot? Yep. But it's always on my mind to be able to share gratitude, pay gratitude, acknowledge, and do it in person. Do it in person as much as possible.
And gratitude, I mean, again, so the lesson as far as a practice, an early practice, I'm going to ask you if you can come back on I forgot to actually put the timer on, so I have no idea about how much time. I'm guessing it's around that time, around 45, 50 minutes. Yeah. But, practicing gratitude, you even said it, you have these gratitude napkins on your table. I know that for us, after meal, you've been with me where we practice gratitude after meal. 2 things we were grateful today, 1 thing we were good at today, 1 thing we're looking forward to, 1 thing we love about ourselves. Some of our leaders write gratitude journals. So again, if moving our mind into something, it's very, very hard to focus or be stressed or be in a negative frame when we're focusing on gratitude. It's taking those moments to reach out to people and share gratitude. So I think it's a beautiful way for us to end. I'm going to invite you back, and I really want to get into some of the skill sets of how you've been able to build your ability to live the life you lead, some of the lessons you've learned, but exactly the skill sets and the exact how-tos and how you've developed them and how they're working for you and how maybe they've even changing in this modern era where social media is playing a larger role, but the belly to belly, the human contact is still so important. I just want to sort of hand back to you. Any last sort of thoughts for the end of this show before I wrap it up? Anything you'd like to add, or any last words of wisdom? Or?
I think in life, I think of parenting right now in this time. I think of network marketing as a business. I think of how we're going to tackle the next 6 months or a year. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. It's just about finding a way, and trust your gut that whatever way you're choosing right now is going to provide a step for you. So whether it's right or whether it's wrong, you're still going to get a step. You're going to get a lesson out of it, because I believe everybody teaches me a lesson, and sometimes it's a good lesson, sometimes it's bad, but I take it as a lesson. So I would just be open to the offers that are in front of you versus thinking that something's being taken away from you.
Awesome. So as I wrap up, I always say that the show's called My Extra Mile. I'm listening as I'm talking to my guests around, what is their extra mile? What is that thing? And Kyle came across really beautifully with one of the sentences he said is that each day when he was on the ski hill, he was looking for 1 thing to master. The 1 thing, they're not 1,000 things, just 1 small improvement every single day. And then he said when he came to this business, what he did was he looked at it, same philosophy. And, so we can look at it as that 1% improvement. And the people that are willing to do that 1 little thing and be so aware, be conscious, be intentional about improvement. And it's not, again, I'm going to do 1,000 things. It's like, wow, if I can just refine this conversation, if I can just refine, this language, if I can just refine how I explain the financial part, if I can so with practice, and if I can move my needle that one tiny degree, then imagine what it's going to look like in 365 days. Or while you're sitting there right now, Kyle, and enjoying this time of isolation on your lake, chopping wood, and being with your family, and is because your commitment to that little extra mile. So thank you, my friend. I love you, and I look forward to
Thank you. Love you too, buddy. Such a pleasure. Cheers.
Ciao.